Hi BookTube, Aaron here. Hope you're doing okay. Today I'm going to carry on with my library tour, and we're over here now. I think you can just about see some of the books over there. And we're getting into the general fiction now, so it's just categorised A to Z by the author's last name. And there's one book on top, there's some bits and bobs, but the book that's on top is Our Souls at Night by Kent Hurrough, which we picked up recently, so I don't know too much about it. I saw MJ did a tag about like books that sort of books that destroy you and then books that kind of heal you, and this was a kind of healing book. So yeah, I think it's about two sort of elderly people kind of finding each other, late in life, and sounds very sweet. Then next up we've got Douglas Adams. So we've got Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is, it was one of those things where when I was growing up I was always listening to the radio drama of it, and I was watching the TV show, and then there was the film as well, and so it just kind of saturated my life, and so it's just always a delight to go back to this. But I think when I was a teenager I only read like the first two books, so I never actually got very far with the books themselves, so I'd like to get more of them and just sort of read them all. And then there's Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency as well, which is really, really good. There's also a really good audio drama of this as well, and in the book it's quite funny that the titular character, Dirk Gently, he doesn't really turn up until about halfway through. There's a lot of setting up in this novel. Then we've got The Thing Around Your Neck by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, with a really lovely cover, and it's a really quite interesting short story collection, although as I often find with short story collections it can be very much hit or miss. I didn't really know too much about just sort of all the political and sort of racial divisions in Nigeria. I was totally oblivious to all of that before I read the book, so it was really quite cool. Then we've got The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Really don't remember too much about this. Other than the general sort of setup and the situation of the dystopia. The Elegance of the Hedgehog by Muriel Barbary. Don't know too much about this either, and haven't read it, but it's one of those ones, again, I don't know, a kind of relaxing read maybe, not too sure. Then we've got The 39 Steps by John Buchan, one I'd really like to get to at some point. I think every time I pick this book up I just think I need to read it. It's only small, so maybe I should make it a priority for April, because I've been meaning to read it. I've had it for about 5 years, but just haven't read it. Then we've got some Ray Bradbury. This is the only Ray Bradbury I've got. It's The Illustrated Man, and it's just got this great conceit. It's sort of stories within a story, kind of like the Canterbury Tales or something like that, where this man comes upon the illustrated man, and he's covered in these tattoos and these illustrations, and he discovers that these illustrations are moving and they're telling stories, and so the idea is that every story in this collection is another illustration on the illustrated man. And again, it was very much hit or miss, but there were some really fun and kind of twisted stories in there, and he's Bradbury. He just has such a great voice as a writer. You just feel just in completely safe hands, and you just want to keep going. So I need to read some more Ray Bradbury. Then we've got Ragnarok by A.S. Byatt. Again, haven't read it, so I don't really have anything to say. I don't think I've read anything by A.S. Byatt. This one, I'm not sure whether this is like a novelisation or whether it's sort of historical fiction, or whether it's a work of non-fiction. But it's Belle, The True Story of Dido Belle by Paula Byrne, and they made a film about her life as well. But yeah, I really don't know where on the bookshelf to put it, but it's in the fiction at the moment, even though it's a true story. And then we've got Oscar and Lucinda by Peter Carey. I need to read more by Peter Carey, but he's just such an amazing writer. He has such just such an amazing attention to detail, and it's like reading just a really delicious, exquisite poet. But it's like a 500-page novel, so it's a real treat. It's really just an immersive and tragic story, and it's just so wonderfully told. And then I'll be twisting around a lot now. We've got some books on the top again. This is just a notebook, which I've started. It's got books all over it, so I've started using it for tags and things like that, just to write down the prompts. Then we've got Madame Bovary by Flaubert. I hauled this recently. It's got a rather sad-looking dust cover, and I've been given instructions on how to fix it. I just need to get around to that. And I've got a few other dust covers in that they're rather worse for wear, so I might just have a day where I just fix up quite a few dust covers. But yeah, Madame Bovary by Flaubert. Just one of those books I'd really quite like to get to. In a really old Penguin Classics, it's got like a list on the back of all the classics they had at that point. The first one is The Odyssey by Homer, and the most recent one, number 17, was Pierre Garot by Balzac. And then it says, in preparation, there's The Last Days of Socrates by Plato, stuff by Sophocles, Caesar, and there's Purgatory and Paradise from the Divine Comedy, because I think they've already published Inferno. Canterbury Tales, Stendhal, The Scarlet and Black, plays by Chekhov, spelt with a T like Tchaikovsky, and Tales by Hans Andersen. So yeah, I don't know, it's quite cool to see that just so many things that now we just expect to see in Penguin Classics, they hadn't got to yet. They've only published 17 Penguin Classics up to that point. So that's really cool, and this is in really rather good condition. And this is the translation by Alan Russell. So yeah, just really lovely. I was quite excited. Well, initially I was excited when I saw it in the bookshop, and then I was aghast because I saw just how badly beaten up the dust cover was, and it made me think that maybe the book itself wouldn't be in very good condition, but the book itself is in good condition. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that. Then we've got The Leopard by Giuseppe de Lampedusa, a book that comes up all the time, but I have absolutely no idea what it's about, but it only adds to the mystery, and I'm all the more intrigued as to what actually happens in this novel and how great the writing is and all of that. And then we've got The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton. I read this recently with Alan from Big Hard Books and Classics, and Flossie from the Grape Jelly Library, and it was really fun reading it with them both. Alan loved it so much, and he went back to read it again straight afterwards, and Flossie, her relationship with the book has been rather rocky. She's still going quite slowly, and so Alan's reading it along with her, so he's doing laps around her. But yeah, it was still good to read it again. It was my second time through, and it's just an immaculately structured book, in my opinion. And then we've got a bucket. Then we've got Karel Čapek, Rossum's Universal Robot and War with the Newts. So Rossum's Universal Robot is the first time that robot was used, and I think it comes from a word that means like worker or slave or something like that. But I think I'd heard of War with the Newts before I'd heard of Rossum's Universal Robot. But anyway, this is something I need to get to as well. But it's not quite as urgent as the 39 Steps. We've got some Truman Capote, if I can get it out. So there's In Cold Blood, which I quite liked. I'm not sure if I'd read it again. I think I'd been reading lots of like Southern Gothic sort of stuff, lots of Flannery O'Connor and Carson McCullers and William Faulkner. So it kind of felt natural to read In Cold Blood after all of that. So maybe after Faulkner in August, if I'm still in the mood, I might reread this just to see where I stand. But this is the only thing by Truman Capote that I've read so far. But we've also recently picked up Breakfast at Tiffany's, and it's got a few other stories in it as well. Then we've got some John le Carré. We've got Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and if you watched the Penguin Modern Classics video, I had a couple of le Carré books there, and I picked them up all at the same time, and whoever had them hadn't, they kind of squeezed them into a bookshelf, so the spines are all twisted round like that. Otherwise they're okay, but it just makes me a bit sad seeing how they've been mistreated in their past. Then we've got The Constant Gardener, and so a little later on in his writing career, and I really quite like this. It's kind of like The Luminaries, just an immaculately plotted novel. And then the most recent one, published after his death, Silverview, which I quite like to get to. It's rather, it's not that thick, and the font in here is quite large as well, so it wouldn't take that long to read. Then we've got The Invention of Morale by Adolfo Boy Casares, which is just a wonderfully short but weird story about an escaped convict who he finds himself on an island, and there are all these people on the island walking around and kind of promenading, however you say it. It's got lovely illustrations, but all these people just walking around and having parties and talking and all of that stuff. And he tries to, well, initially, he's an escaped convict, so he doesn't want anyone to see him, and he's kind of aghast that there are people there. But then he kind of falls in love with one of the people, and then he finds that the people just go on as if he's not there, even when he's in plain sight. They just go on as if he doesn't exist. So it's a really interesting story. I won't spoil how it all works out, but it's just really, really good. Again, another one I'd like to reread. Then we've got Arrival by Ted Chiang. This is, well, it was published as The Story of Your Life and Others, and then that story was made into the film Arrival, so they changed the title to just to fit in with the film. And it's decent sort of speculative fiction, sort of sci-fi kind of stuff. It's interesting and it's fun. Then we've got The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and this is an interesting book about a boy kind of discovering himself, really, I suppose, about kind of finding treasure, and the treasure is really his potential, I suppose. But it's kind of obviously a parable or an allegory for a kind of self-revelation or whatever. But it's still well written, well told, still an enjoyable read. It's just always a bit, I don't know, it makes me, it's just a bit cringy when a writer is just being so obvious about what they mean. But otherwise, it's still an enjoyable read. Then we've got J.M. Coetzee, In the Heart of the Country, which is a really short book that I really should have read by now. And I think the last time I had a look in this, let's see if it's still in here. I don't know, I think when I got it, there was like a receipt in it from when whoever bought it still had it, and I don't know, I found it interesting. Then we've got Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I read this last year, sort of towards the end of the year. I think it's really, really good. It's just a great, forgetting what to say now, a great unreliable narrator, where, you know, as the plot is unfolding, you can totally see where it's going, but the narrator doesn't see it yet, and it's excruciating, but really good at the same time. Then we've got some French tales, sort of selected and translated by Helen Constantine, and it's tales, sort of short stories from all over France, giving you a taste for all the different regions. So every story is, so there's Bretagne, there's Basse Normandy and Haute Normandy, Nord-Pas-de-Calais, Picardy, Ile-de-France, and so on. I won't torture the French language anymore. But yeah, every story is either set in or kind of expressing the qualities of a certain French area. And there's loads of great sort of classic French writers in here. There's Colette, there's Guy de Maupassant, there's Balzac. Oh, actually no, I don't think there is any Balzac. No, but there's some Emile Zola in here as well, which are all writers that I'd love to get to. But there are also some sort of more contemporary French writers as well. So if I'm in the mood for trying out some French literature, it's somewhere for me to go back to and sort of check out different writers and see if I want to try some more. And then we're nearly there. We've got two more left. We've got the collected stories of Lydia Davis, which I've been sort of dipping out in and out of this year, and I really quite enjoy her as a writer. There's a kind of like a kind of deadpan or kind of wry sense of humour to her writing that reminds me of like cartoons, like a New Yorker cartoon or something like that. There's just something kind of wry and kind of humorous to her writing. And then to finish off today, we've got Underworld by Don DeLillo, and this edition says absolutely nothing about what this book is about. It's just got loads of blurbs by from William Boyd and Jeff Dyer and John Burnside. So they all think it's good. But I've heard people talk about this, and it's one of those big sort of postmodern books. I don't know if I'd start with this. I think if I wanted to try Don DeLillo, I'd try something a bit shorter. But I found it secondhand, and it was really cheap, so I thought I'd pick it up for if I'm ever in the mood and I'm ever able to sort of dive in. But there we go. That's the end of this sort of portion of the library tour. I think going on, I'll try and do like 2 of these squares each time. But it depends, because some of them have loads of short books in there. Some of them have just a few rather big books in them. So we'll see how it goes. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found at least something interesting, whether it's a book you've enjoyed in the past or a book you'd like to get to at some point. It's been fun so far, and we're slowly getting there. So yeah, until next time, thanks very much, and I'll see you soon.